recording over here as we get into Bitcoin for the day. Now, of course, we have hit our short and medium term and even daily targets up into the top end of this blue box territory right here. I do suspect that this would be a good place for a bit of a short-term pullback as we were looking for yesterday, and I'd say the same thing today as well. Now, do not confuse pullback with a reversal in this case. There's a really good conversation in the Discord yesterday where someone was like, it looks like the 4 hour is showing weakness. Is this going to be bad? It's like, no, man, of course, things ebb and flow naturally, especially after Bitcoin's, I think, single biggest day or second biggest day from start to finish, an almost $6,000 day from about 37,500 to a high of about 44,250. I mean, that is doing some bad mental math. Yeah, that is quite the day. So to the upside, I think it's one of the biggest days in Bitcoin's history, just nominally speaking. Percentage wise, also pretty damn good as well. Almost a 20% gainer in just one day. But ultimately, things do typically take a little bit of a profit taking, especially in a region like this around our last few highs, going all the way back into January as well. And I do suspect that we're going to see a bit of exhaustion on the short-term time frame. So let's go see if that's true. And for right now, actually, the 4 hour RSI not showing any regular bearish divergence, which I actually would have been expecting on a move like this to look for a pullback. But what I would say is a little bit more important to myself is going to be the BBWP read in this case, coming off of extremes right here. Again, I'm just looking for a contraction alongside the 4 hour jewel, which is also going to be losing its upside momentum as well. And the jewel is really meant to be working with the BBWP, being that it is mediated by volatility. And while this is not like a, short it into the fucking ground signal, it is a likely pullback into, first and foremost, a higher low signal. So where are the potential areas for a technical higher low in this case? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the low to the high. Let's actually go to a fresh chart in this case right here, or maybe this one's a fresh chart. Well, I'm going to make it a fresh chart because I just deleted everything on it. So there we go. And whoops, wrong area. I want to be taking the actual low of this area right here to the hot, and I did it again. Man, it's been a very, very, very interesting morning. Anyways, in this case right here, anywhere down around about $41,000 is fair game. I'd say that I'm more or less bullish on Bitcoin as long as we are especially above $41,000, and that would be kind of the lowest point that I'd be looking for on a higher low. Below about 40,500 or especially 40,000 even, I do start to look at this as potential bull trap. I don't think that that's what's happening right here, but that would be my sort of conditions for a failure, essentially, leading into a major move to the downside. If we're just looking at the last move right here, obviously these numbers are going to be drastically different, and this would actually a little bit more line up with what I'm talking about. Again, below $40,000, obviously problems. Until then, $42,000 and $41,000 respectively are the areas that I'm essentially looking towards on a bit of a short-term pullback with a higher low in mind. So I would expect that momentum oscillators like short-term time frame stochastic momentum would be turning down at the same time, and indeed it is. You can see right here will be turning down with any sort of a closure below 44,307, and that's going to be coming in about an hour and 38 minutes and 57 seconds. So by the time this video is done, we will have clarity on that situation, and I imagine all the other lower term timeframes probably playing alongside that as well. Yep, we see the 3 hour also going to be freshly turning down below 44,264. And by the way, I mean, we're right around that region, but ultimately, again, the more that it kind of holds sideways here, the less likely it's going to have one of those more deeper retracements, probably only retraces to the 382 in this case. Again, if we can hold, steady here for like another half day or so. Anyways, buy hourly coming down already. 44,400 is going to be the magical number right there, and hourly is loading and will be turning down below 44,100. So if we go back into here and actually make a short-term time frame range resolution analysis, I would say that in this case we would see a short-term time frame range resolution to the downside with targets down first and foremost to about $42,000 would be with an hourly closure below 42,000 and just under 900 right there. So that'd be kind of the critical area for myself. I imagine we do have a little bit of bearish divergence on the hourly. Can't really make too much out of that. I mean, it is just an hourly after all. So it was kind of a surprise to me to see it not even relevant on the 4 hour in this case. So probably only looking at a shallow retracement. I think, anywhere between about 42 to 41 at most would be fair game. But again, below $40,000, I would actually call this a bull trap and look for big moves back down. Again, I don't think that that's what's happening overall, but that would be my criteria for that, as it always needs to be. Anyways, focusing now on the medium and higher term timeframes, namely the daily, which I want to play back into this chart right here, the big one that we were working off of for the past couple weeks here. You can see that Bitcoin is right around the major resolution region, which is 44,500 on a daily closing basis, or $45,000 on a 4-hour closing basis. Thus far, finding a little bit of just a little bit of consolidation right here, but ultimately I would have the same sort of analysis on this as we have for the past few weeks. That is my sort of line in the sand, and we're going to take this full circle in a second with the very higher term timeframes. But ultimately, Bitcoin above these regions does confirm this as a major low, which is going to bleed into the other higher term timeframes. So now we're taking differentiating between the short term timeframes, which can very easily play out a pullback. Even a backfill in yesterday's open would be actually only down to about 43 or so. Interesting, rather aggressive right there. But ultimately, this is going to have major implications with the higher term timeframes if that does get confirmed. Not only would I be having targets back up somewhere between initially the 1.272 and the 1.414 extension right here, which is between about 49 and 50, about just under $51,000. I would be looking for a greater leg up over time, of course. In this case, we do see that volatility is still expanding on the daily right here. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the move is still in motion. So while the short term timeframes can play out a pullback, the higher term timeframes are still within the context of of this move, so to speak. And on top of that, while we do see daily RSI getting a test back into the bullish control zone for the first time since, about a few weeks ago actually now. We kind of do expect that first push to probably be pushed back a little bit. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, and why this is all very important, concerning the, let's just call it $45,000 level, again, on a 4-hour closure or a daily above 44.5, is that it would have major implications with the 5-day and the weekly. I think the weekly is a little bit more obvious right here, as we identified yesterday, in the sense that this would confirm this as a major low. This would also confirm this as a higher low compared to the late January low right here. And in that case, we also would have 2 drives of hidden bullish divergence alongside generally low volatility. In fact, this is very low volatility relative to the last couple of years, going back to July 2020. And when I see something like that, where a low is being put in on low volatility, and then we're starting to get upside signals from our momentum oscillators, I'm looking for that next expansion on volatility to very likely be, a major move in that same direction. In this case, that would be to the upside. And because we do have 2 drives of hidden bullish divergence right here, there would be technical targets actually all the way up towards, basically the mid to low $50,000 territory, which can obviously, set up for a bigger move later on. And here's also the other major thing that I do want to get into, is that on the fundamentals chart, we did see something that hasn't happened basically since May 2020, where we got a positive slope on the accumulation distribution indicator, which is one of those indicators that it's just one of those indicators that has been pretty much invaluable since the start of Bitcoin in essentially getting the macro direction. The only thing that I care about on this indicator itself is the slope of this of this indicator essentially. And whenever we do see a slope change, especially in the extremes, which right now, to be fair, we are not in the extremes, so this would be a counterpoint to what I'm about to say, but anytime that we have seen a slope change, it has correlated with macro shifts in direction. You can backtest this yourself by simply looking at the vertical green bars on this particular chart, and you will notice that both the upside and the downside, it has gotten all of these moves incredibly well. And actually this one should be right there, making it even better in this case. And for whatever reason, I don't have one right here. What is going on, man? Did this chart not save the other day, or what's up? Anyways, I'm not going to backtest this on video again, because we've done this a million damn times in the history of Bitcoin. But what is significant is that we got a positive slope coming into March for the first time, again, basically since May of 2020. The only counterpoint that I have to this would be that this is not in the red zone. So those have not been, not as well tested in the annals of history for Bitcoin in particular, but ultimately, more good than bad, I would say. And on top of that, if we go over here to our other higher term time frame, especially on the 5-day, I do want to address this. Or sorry, let's actually start off with the weekly. Weekly stochastic momentum obviously popping up from a very low level, will be remaining with upside momentum as long as Bitcoin is above 35,350. And the 5-day in particular did play off of a major historical level as well, which I do want to talk about yet again. This is something that we identified in late January, and I just want to follow up on this because when we're talking about a higher term time frame signal, yes, these naturally take a long time to play out. So this is a good sort of case study that you can see over the past month and a half now that, is starting to come to fruition, even though it's taken, it's required a shit ton of patience, but that is what is required on a higher term time frame like this. Anyways, anytime that we have seen the 5-day stochastic momentum come down to this green horizontal bar right here at about the 8.5 region, it has, typically correlated with major macro lows, actually. 3 out of the 4 prior iterations of this have been macro lows. One of them was a bull trap, a major bull trap, I should state. And even within the context of that bull trap, there was, a pretty nice move to the upside in the interim there, 70% on wick to wick, and on a closing basis about 21% or 20%, let's just say. But it was ultimately a failure. So this is why I do want to have invalidation conditions very specifically for this setup. Ultimately, below $40,000 is going to be the magical number right there. But between the past 4 signals, those 3 ones that were macro cycle lows, I mean, those were all coming off the same region. And while it did still take some time, you'll notice even on this first one over here, where things were relatively fast compared to the other ones, it still took about half a year for Bitcoin to really get going. But those were, major macro lows alongside the fundamental chart over here representing the accumulation distribution indicator. These combined with each other have correlated, even better. So if you do want to avoid that potential bull trap that we did see right around here in the 2014 segment, in comparison to this one right here, that would be the same area. Well, we did not see the same thing on the accumulation distribution indicator. The accumulation distribution indicator, as you can see right here, did still have a negative slope the whole way through. It never got a positive slope. So that would be one way to kind of enhance that signal and increase the statistical relevancy of it, I do suspect. Anyways, I also want to bring up, or do I want to bring up? No, I won't bring up that one. I don't think that we need to. I think that I probably beat your face to death already with this analysis. I want to get into the crown trading application now and talk about a few things that I would say would be a major caution. But first and foremost, I should follow up on the last about 3 months of this analysis, where basically, or not 3 months, but like last 1.5 years now of analysis, where basically whenever we've seen the global open interest get above, especially anywhere above about 13.5 to 14 billion, that is, we have seen, typically catastrophic moves to the downside to the tune of 20% or more, in some cases even 50%. The higher, the more severe, typically speaking. And over the past few months here, we've been having major alerts that you can actually do for yourself on the crown trading application, just like I did over here, for when it reset, which I, kind of had an idea of about 10 billion, let's say, of which we got that right here. And then I've put a few more on there just for like major extremes in this case, but 10 billion we kind of looked at as, a bit of a reset in this case. And we obviously got that a few days ago, where it got down at a low of about just above 9.5 billion in this case. So I do look at that as a full reset, and now we get to play the game on the other side, meaning that the game is still, again, above 14 billion. I do look at that as, historically speaking, problematic for typically for price action. And with that in mind, right now it is not problematic at all. 11.5 billion is certainly not an extreme, but I would keep a keen eye on this rally as global open interest does what's it called, update, in which, by the way, if you do have access to the premium features, you do see that you can see the updates on the hourly feed. It's actually the same as the daily right now, so not too much of a difference, but obviously that'll change intraday. But in this case right here, looking at the extremes, I would say that a word of caution later on down the road, if we do start to see it approach about 14 billion, that's at the point where I'd start to look for, potential failures on your higher term timeframes, thus resulting in the next major pullback, and then we'll kind of come back to it after that. But that could be further away, obviously. Who knows what price action Bitcoin gets to before that happens? That's something that you have to analyze, or at least I would imagine you have to analyze at the time of. So you can't be having like a crystal ball with that bullshit. And on top of that, we do see, can't be having a crystal ball with that bullshit. On top of that, we do see consistently positive funding rates for the first time in a while now, especially over the past few days, as you would imagine, as Bitcoin does put in a major low right there. Still not anything too concerning right here. 0.006% is below what I consider parity, which is 0.01%. So that is not a major issue. And if I go to the hourly feed right here, what is incredibly interesting is that we're actually printing negative rates right now. We're actually printing negative rates right now, very slightly, but it is certainly below parity, as shorts are essentially either closing or having to get out of their position in a jiff right here. So I do do imagine that that does align with, you know, if Bitcoin does have a little bit of a short-term pullback, very likely going to set in a higher low. And then I do look for Bitcoin to probably, you know, probably bust on through and do some busting action, you know, over the following weeks to the, you know, mid to low $50,000 territory. Probably, I would imagine that's probably where you do see a major pullback from, and then we'll come back to it after that. I don't think that is worthwhile to get like too much ahead of ourselves, obviously. But for right now, just kind of nailing it down into a few key sentences. Short term, a little bit more like the pullback, although I'm just looking for a bit of a higher low, whether that be at 42 or 41. That's all fair game. I'm essentially bullish on Bitcoin for the long term, as long as Bitcoin is above $40,000. And I am looking at 44,500 on a daily closure, or let's just say $45,000 on a 4-hour for major upside continuation in the following weeks with those targets in mind. And is there anything else that I'm missing right here? I think that's going to be it for that. So hopefully that was helpful. And there you go for Bitcoin, sirs and zers.